Right, let's find out now what the new ANC leadership means for business. And for that, we're joined by Tebogo Khaas, founder and chief entrepreneur at the Institute of Chartered Entrepreneurs. Good to have you. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
After 5 long days of watching the back and forth of this party, it's important that we do watch, because ultimately what comes out of it is the cohort that is going to lead society, possibly a president of the country also coming out of there. The president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, has been re-elected for another term. To what extent does that re-election embolden him and give him, I suppose, a stronger mandate to act decisively?
You know, I often ask myself, does he even know if he's emboldened? Because it might very well be that he's not even aware that he's emboldened. Because there are instances even in the past, during the past 3 or 4 years since he's been at the helm, where he could have acted, where he had everything behind him, the wind behind him, both the social and other political capital behind him, where he failed to act. I mean, take for instance the issue of Judge John Hlophe, who should have long been suspended, and he had the JSC saying, please, we are done with him, he's free to be, we are okay to suspend him. He didn't. And the same with the public protector. You know, he took forever, and then by the time he acted, they then used that against him. So look, you're getting rid of her because she's about to launch her. So he gave her all the time. So he's the kind of person that it's in him not to act swiftly, even when we believe that he should feel that I'm emboldened to act. Because even with public protector, he had all the time, all the necessary steps had been taken, and he just didn't. So we just hope maybe he will feel emboldened, or maybe rather, let's say, maybe Gwede will feel to remind me every time that, please, you are emboldened to act, and then he'll start acting.
Talking about things that will be used against him, I mean, one thinks of the fact that about 2 or 3 weeks ago, he had given up. He would hang the towel, literally. And the allies that are closer to him, Gwede Mantashe being one of them, came and said, no, you can't give up now. Some ministers that we saw supporting him very clearly during this conference came to him and said, no, you've got to stay, some premiers, and so on and so forth. Does he come in now indebted to these individuals who saw him to victory in this conference, and therefore does it, for example, set back things like a just transition where he needs to be decisive and sometimes take unpopular decisions, but he's got Gwede Mantashe, who is a close ally, who has a particular idea about where he wants this just transition to go, or the pace at which it must go, and how much coal must still play a big role in the economy of South Africa?
Yes, I mean, Ramaphosa, or President Ramaphosa, rather, seems to me to be a reluctant president. He doesn't really come across as somebody who really wants to govern this country, or to be at the helm of the ANC, never mind. And yes, it took the likes of Gwede Mantashe to say, look, Mklegas, you are not going anywhere. You're staying here, you're going to finish your term, and you're going to do your second term. And basically, he owes Gwede Mantashe his second term, actually, more than anything else, and his allies, Gungubele and so forth. And with regards to him and now being able to control the likes of Gwede, it's going to be difficult. Even before he resigned, you'd remember that recently we had Andre de Ruyter leave, and Gwede Mantashe has been casting aspersions on Andre de Ruyter, putting pressure on Andre to leave. Eventually, Andre just left before the conference.
Others, I'm saying his last utterances were the stroke that broke the camel's back, where he says, I mean, this is akin to actually trying to topple the government.
No, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, he said it as much that, you know, now he's trying to spin it. He said, no, I said he's going to topple ESCOM. So, but either way, it doesn't really mean much. Gwede is the king, I would hate to say kingmaker, is a Ramaphosa maker. Without Gwede, it doesn't look like Ramaphosa has got the, the guts or the guile to say, look, I'll fight my battles, and I'll make sure that I implement that which I want to see implemented. In fact, he relies so much on Gwede and others, I think, to do all the fighting for him. And we don't need somebody like that. You need somebody as a president whom they know that they'll make a decision, whether good or bad, but they will make a decision. If it's bad, they'll come and rectify it later. But to have somebody who's always indecisive, as policy doesn't augur well. Indeed, he also needs to act against those who actually went out on publicly to actually question his leadership, the likes of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Lindiwe Sisulu, and many others, whom we need to read the Riot Act and say, look, I can't have you in my cabinet given your kind of conduct. He needs to have people who will be able to support him, shore him up, and make sure that he governs without looking over his shoulder. Fortunately, with regards to the top 7, he's got in the likes of Fikile Mbalula, SG, somebody who will be able to, make sure that things are run properly at Luthuli House, and he can then focus on what he needs to do.
Now, others would say that that's precisely the challenge that he's going to have to face, because if he's going to have to rid himself of the likes of Lindiwe Sisulu, who did not support him, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who were not in support of him, this gives them enough time to be outside of government, outside of the running of the party, but inside the internal fight back that is within his organization. And there will be a continuation of this disunity that we have seen also in the first 5 years of his administration. So he will be fighting that internal fight. The economic freedom fighters have already said, we're waiting for you in parliament. You're going to have the roughest 5 years if you return there. So he'll be fighting opposition over the Phala issue. He'll be fighting internally over whatever action he's going to take against those who are his detractors. Will he have enough time to then run the country and implement those things that I suppose are good for business? Look, the Rand seems to have responded well. The market seems to believe it's good news that he's staying. But when you look at it in reality, is he going to be able to do anything?
Look, Lindiwe Sisulu and Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and Kalni House and so forth, they can make all the noise they make. They're outside of the core. Kalni House has been kicked out, basically. There's nothing much they can do. And in somebody really like Fikile Mbalula, I think he will be an attack dog. He'll deal with them. He's already sent out a message that, look, I'm going to read everybody the Riot Act. You can't go and make yourself a spokesperson of an organization, as it has been the case so far, where everybody felt emboldened to go and speak and say the things that they say. So Mbalula will deal with them. He then needs to focus on what needs to be done. And when you talk about the markets warming up to the news, we would have expected that the markets would warm up to that. But the question is, what does it do? He keeps talking about green shoots. I heard him mention the word green shoot again. We don't see green shoots. The only green shoots that we see are those that don't matter. In fact, you see a little bit of something that promises on one hand, but the rest, the economy is just depressed as can be. In fact, he even mentioned regulatory burden and embedding that. That's something that he's been talking about. He even went on to appoint a regulatory czar, in his office. Yes. We still haven't seen that insofar as opening the opportunity and making sure that the cost of doing business for small businesses has been, and also the energy crisis is at the high. I want to come talk about that. The energy crisis, you get a sense that there's been some talk around securing the infrastructure. Thandi Modise, Minister of Defense, Military, saying that, asking a very important question, and maybe I don't know if we've asked that enough. How does it happen that all 8 units will break down at once? And they are getting a sense that there is some degree of sabotage. The kind of response that we are seeing, even though we all know that it's not going to happen tomorrow, it's still a long way before they try to fix Eskom. But is that a move in the right direction? It is a move in the right direction, but I'm not sure if that is where all the problems are and so far the cause of the breakdowns. I just saw earlier today on one of the channels, it might have been your channel, a clip where they were showing individuals who were caught mixing coals at a yard somewhere along the route towards the power station in Mpumalanga. Yeah. And you could see that the good coal leaves the mine, and then on its way en route to the power plant, it gets to be diverted and then emptied. Coal that mixed with rocks or whatever it is, bad stuff, gets sent through to Eskom. So they will need to intercede on all all areas that are critical in the supply chain, from the mine en route and make sure until it gets to be delivered and actually used, they need to be able to monitor the coal, make sure there's no breakages in terms of monitoring that, which is something I don't think they're doing quite diligently at the moment. Fortunately, they also use the likes of private securities like the Bidvest and others who are able to provide intelligence and some support to SAPS. But because we're dealing with very resourced individuals who are the corrupt guys who are actually involved in these machinations, they would also go to the extent of even bribing the very same cops who are supposed to be policing them. I mean, 2 days ago we had in Limpopo a Hawks official, a senior Hawks official, I think the captain level or thereabout, got arrested for 250,000 bribe, to make a case disappear. So we still have, the system is broken. But I'm glad that we're seeing some green shoots, allow me to use that word, where we see that Eskom has identified the key areas in terms of that affect its performance, including where wrong coal is being sent through to them or inferior coal is being sent to them, and also where there's also seepages or theft of diesel and theft of whatever it is that's consumed that they need to run those plants. So we can only encourage and hope they do what they were doing. It's unfortunate when you hear comments like Gwede did say about Andre being a police. Yes, you need to police your stock. You need to make sure if you think your stock has been stolen, you have to. If you have to do it yourself, you will have to do it yourself.
I don't know whether it was a slip of a tongue or maybe it is a conversation that is currently being had in the ANC that this was the Minister of Finance saying by February a decision needs to be taken on whether there is a CEO or CEOs at Eskom. Which could indicate, dual CEOs. Maybe one might as well be a police and be good in legal matters, and one be good in operational matters.
Yeah. You see, that again shows us something that defines a character of President Ramaphosa, where you have his executives, people that he's appointed, being able to pronounce on things that he ought to be taking a lead. If you're going to have a minister of responsible for Eskom, which is a public enterprise, not pronouncing on the process, then you have a Gwede who's not responsible for Eskom, at least not directly, and the Minister of Finance weighing in on matters that should be outside their purview. It should worry us to say, look, the ultimate person who needs to be pronouncing or giving direction is the president, and the president is missing in action. And that is why you find everybody, you wouldn't dare have this kind of conversation during Mbeki's time, even during Zuma's time. You'd never have the ministers going out there to contradict the president or going out and making pronouncement. At the very least, you could have the Guptas, giving indication as to what's going to happen next.
Top 7, at least you say you're getting a sense that he will not have to be looking over his back as to what's happening at Luthuli House because Fikile Mbalula will be there. We might, of course, see a reshuffle of the deputy president at this particular point, which means Paul Mashatile will also be now in the presidency. Will that give him room enough to do what he needs to do?
He should. If you could make sure that as it's expected for Paul Mashatile to actually leave Luthuli House and now be full-time at union buildings. He will be kept just as the cat David Mabuza was, keep him busy, send him to Russia, Ukraine, and all those other exotic destinations, and make sure that there's no consolidation. We can consolidate at Luthuli House, and throughout the provinces. And yes, he would have enough. He would have to make sure that though he uses all the time or the opportunities as they present themselves. Because even when the likes of Paul is gone out of Luthuli House, you still have Nomvula Mkonyane, for example, somebody that we know is part of the RET forces. But also, with regards to Ms. Mkonyane, it's just a matter of time when the investigative directorate knocks on her door to say, look, come and show us those bribe packs and the stuff that you allegedly received from Bosasa. The sooner it happens, maybe that is why the cynic in me thinks that is why they have to get a second DSG, because you want to make sure that when one of the DSG is in peril for one reason or other, or is required to step aside, then there's still progress doesn't hamper progress or administration within Luthuli House. So it's exciting time that we are heading for. We will see come the January statement, but not so much on the statement, but by the State of the Nation address, what it is that he will start pronouncing, what his new cabinet will look like. He's got an opportunity when Ayanda Zondo left.
Yeah.
There was a vacancy, and now there's also another vacancy. I can't remember one of the ministers.
Fikile would be needing to move from.
Fikile will need to move,
yes.
and then Lindwe has to go, and so must Nkosazana go. So he'll have to reshuffle his cabinet and make sure that people are able and willing to actually deliver.
Tebogo Khaas, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming in tonight. Founder of the Institute of Chartered Entrepreneurs, Tebogo Khaas.